I am immensely happy to join the Rana Samvad program here on this sacred land of Mahu. This is the very land that gave birth to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, a towering intellectual of our country, and at the same time honored the Indian Army with a glorious tradition of scholar warriors, a tradition that makes the entire nation proud. Friends, the very title of the program, Rana Samvad, strikes me as a quite interesting. The name itself is a subject to think about and reflect. And on one hand, Ran evokes the imagery of battle and conflict, and on the other hand, Samvad points towards dialogue, discussion, and reconciliation. At first glance, the two words seem contradictory. Where there is a battle, how can there be a dialogue? And where dialogue is taking place, how can there be a battle? But if we look deeper, this very name embodies one of the most relevant truths of our times. Friends, the name Rana Samvad also has historical basis in India and reminds me of many incidents from our history which show us how civilizationally battles means run and dialogues means Samvad in India were intertwined. In our culture, dialogue is not separate from battle. It comes before the battle. It happens during the battle and it continues even after the battle. Friends, take the Mahabharata for instance. To prevent the war, Lord Sri Krishna went as a messenger of peace. He went to engage in dialogue so that the war could be averted. But when Duryodhana, the antagonist of the epic Mahabharata, refused, the war became inevitable. Even then, during the battle, there was dialogue, and this dialogue is popularly remembered and has been immortalized as a Bhagavad Gita. And after the war was over, there was again dialogue between Yudhishthir and the Bhishma, who lay on his bed of arrows, imparting wisdom of governance and the statecraft. This unique blending of battle and dialogue is something that can only be found in ancient culture such as India. That is why I congratulate you all for choosing such a truly meaningful name for this event. Friends, in today's global environment, it is often the breakdown of dialogue that becomes the root cause of hostility and the conflict. On the other hand, even in times of war, maintaining channels of dialogue remains essential. Many of you would have heard of or read Sun Tzu classic work, The Art of War. In that book, Sun Tzu writes, in war, prepare for peace, and in peace, prepare for war. This shows that from ancient times across the world, war and dialogue have complemented each other. It is therefore a matter of deep satisfaction for me to be present at this Rana Samvad organized through the joint initiative of our tri-services. I am told this is the very first edition of the program. And for that, I extend my heartfelt congratulations to the Chief of Defense Staff and all the three services chiefs and Lieutenant General Shahi, along with my best wishes for the future. Friends, when it comes to dialogue, our Indian philosophical thought accords dialogues a very high place. History bears witness that in our tradition, exchange of ideas and thoughts has never been confined merely to the realm of diplomacy, but has also been an integral part of our cultural development. I believe that today, Rana Samvad is not merely an academic exercise, but one that will further refine our strategic and diplomatic outlook. The thoughts and the conclusions emerging from this dialogue will not only strengthen our defense strategy, but also make a long-term contribution to the nation's overall security architecture and its path of development. Friends, as we begin our discussion on the Ran Samvad, I would like to start with the idea of Ran or battle itself. Since the dawn of civilization, war has been an inseparable part of the human society. And history bears witness to the fact that wars have always left behind devastating consequences. No matter the era or the geography, the outcome of war has invariably been destruction. The loss of human lives and the resources in war can never be justified. Friends, at the very outset, let me emphasize that India has never been a nation that seeks war. We have never initiated aggression against anyone. However, the present geopolitical reality is quite different. Even though we do not harbor any aggressive intent, if someone challenges us, it becomes imperative that we respond with strength. To do so, we must continuously enhance our defense preparedness. This is why training, technological advancement, and a sustained dialogue with partners are of utmost importance for us. Referring to the concept note you shared for the Ran Samvad program, I noticed a very insightful quote from Karl von Clausewitz. He said, "Each age has its own peculiar form of war." In his time, this observation was entirely appropriate. But the present era is defined by non-linear and multi-domain warfare. Today, there is no fixed system of war, no rigid doctrine that we can blindly rely upon. Hence, I would like to state, in the present age, there is no definite peculiar form of war. Friends, if we, for instance, consider the age of colonialism, when naval power was the foremost symbol of strength across the world, nations with formidable and well-equipped navies not only dominated sea trade routes, but also extended their influence over distant lands. The British Empire is the most striking example of this. During that era, Alfred Thayer, sea power theory, gained prominence wherein he declared, "Who rules the sea rules the world." However, the times changed, and by the mid-20th century, the two world wars shifted the center of power towards the sky. Air forces of nations across the world transformed the very nature of warfare. Battles were no longer confined to land or sea. Instead, air superiority became the decisive factor. The Battle of Britain stands out as a remarkable example where the Royal Air Force Spitfires and Hurricanes halted Germany's offensive in the air itself. Since the 1950s, the importance of air power has continued to grow significantly. Friends, after the Second World War, the world entered a new phase, the Cold War era. Though it was not a direct battlefield confrontation, it was marked by an arms race and a series of the proxy wars. During this period, missile technology became the new benchmark of military power. Weapons such as intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched missiles, and the cruise missiles transformed warfare into a matter of minutes. The 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis was the peak of this tension, when just a few days of standoff brought the entire world to the brink of nuclear war. Friends, today in the 21st century, this transformation has become more rapid. Sheer numbers of soldiers or the size of weapon stockpiles are no longer enough. Cyber warfare, artificial intelligence, unmanned aerial vehicles, and satellite-based surveillance are shaping the wars of the future. Precision-guided weapons, real-time intelligence, the data-driven information have now become the cornerstone of success in any conflict. Friends, modern battles are no longer confined to land, sea, and air. They now extend into outer space and cyberspace. Satellite systems, anti-satellite weapons, and space command centers are the new instruments of power. Therefore, what we require today is not just defensive preparedness, but also a proactive strategy. Friends, future wars will not merely be battles of weapons. They will be a combined play of technology, intelligence, economy, and diplomacy. In the times ahead, the nation that masters the triangle of technology, strategy, and adaptability will emerge as the true global power. To put it simply, this is the moment to learn from history and write a new one. That is the moment to anticipate the future and shape one. It was observed closely. Systems and doctrines of war have evolved with time. In just the past 10 to 20 years, the pace of these changes has been so rapid that fixing any permanent pattern has become almost impossible. It would not be wrong to say the age we live in has just one doctrine, that there is none. Circumstances and the challenges change with such speed that every nation is compelled to keep its strategy flexible and responsive. Friends, today in the world, whichever nation decides the battlefield is the one that controls the game and its rules. Others have no option but to respond to this and step into the arena on terms that are not of its own choosing. Our endeavor must be to define the battlefield and the rules of the game ourselves, compelling the adversary to fight there so that the lead advantage always remains with us. Friends, the success of Operation Sindoor is the perfect example in itself. The bravery and the swiftness with which our forces carried out action against the terrorist shelter in Pakistan was something those terrorists could never have been imagined. I firmly believe that every war leaves us with some important learnings. In the course of battle, we are able to realistically assess the level of our preparedness. If we speak the Operation Sindoor, it was indeed a striking demonstration of technology-driven warfare. Friends, be it offensive or defensive techniques, operational practices, quick and efficient war logistics, the seamless integration of our forces are matters of the intelligence and the surveillance. Operation Sindoor gave us a wealth of nations. It provided us with a glimpse of the kind of the challenges and responses that could serve as a valuable guidance for any conflict in the future. You may also have observed that Operation Sindoor has emerged as a great example demonstrating the success of our indigenous platforms, equipment, and the weapon systems. Its achievements have once again underlined that in the times to come, self-reliance is an absolute necessity. We have indeed made significant progress on the path of self-reliance, but there is still a long way ahead that we must travel. Friends, beyond all these aspects, Operation Sindoor has also taught us another crucial lesson: the importance of information and the cyber warfare in today's age. While enhancing our defense capability, it is equally vital to ensure that our information and the cyber infrastructure is made even more robust. I believe we must give this matter deep thought and careful consideration. Friends, amidst all these changes, there has always been one factor that plays a decisive role, the element of surprise. In today's world, this element of surprise has become even more powerful because it is now coupled with technological warfare. Technology is advancing at such a pace that by the time we fully grasp one innovation, another emerges completely alerting the course of warfare. Unmanned aerial vehicles, hypersonic missiles, cyber attacks, and artificial intelligence driven decision making are examples of tools that are bringing unexpected twists to modern conflicts. The most striking feature of this element of surprise is that it no longer has a permanent form. It keeps changing, always carrying uncertainty with it. And it is precisely this uncertainty that confounds adversaries, often becoming the decisive factor in the outcome of war. In our times, the fusion of technology and surprise is making warfare more complex and unpredictable than ever before. That is why we must not only master existing technologies, but also ensure that we are constantly prepared for new innovations and unforeseen challenges. Friends, if you look at the recent example, you can see the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. When the conflict started in 2022, it was primarily conventional warfare, including tanks, artillery, and rifles. The ground forces were engaged in hand-to-hand combat. But in 3 years, the nature of this war changed completely. Now we are witnessing that various types of war systems and doctrines are being deployed in this conflict. Initially, this battle was being fought with the help of tanks and artillery, but now drones, sensor-based weapons, and precision-guided munitions are playing a decisive role. This change shows how the methodology and the tactics of war can change in just a short period of time. It is also clear from this that even in the future, in any conflict, we will not have to rely only on traditional means, but we will have to keep pace with technological advancement continuously. At the same time, I believe that the component of the self-reliance in the defense sector is one of the most important components. If we talk about self-reliance, especially in the field of the defense manufacturing, then I would like to say that India has embarked on a historic journey. We are once counted among the world's largest importers, but today, on the path of the self-reliant India, we are making a place among the reliable exporters of the world. Today, our indigenous platforms, light combat aircraft Tejas, advanced towed artillery gun systems, Akash missile systems, and indigenous aircraft carrier are giving a message to the world that India's technology and quality are now standing at world-class standards. This confidence and strength are due to our scientists, our industry, and our leadership. Today we are making all the equipment in our country that we used to import. You will also be very happy to know that now we have taken another step forward in the direction of making fifth generation fighter aircraft. Now we are moving fast in the direction of making jet engines in India itself. Friends, under the visionary leader of our Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi, the government has made many policy reforms in recent years. Such strong steps have been taken to promote indigenous design, development, and manufacturing. Self-reliance in the defense sector is no longer a dream, but is truly becoming a reality. Friends, the journey of the last 10 years is proof of this. Our defense production, which was only 46,425 crore rupees in 2024, has now increased to a record over 1.5 lakh crores rupees. The contribution of over 33,000 crore rupees from the private sector shows that private industries are also becoming partners in this campaign of Atmanirbhar Bharat. The result of this partnership is that India's defense exports, which were less than 1,000 crore rupees 10 years ago, have now increased to a record of approximately 24,000 crore rupees. This is not just about a trade or production, it is a symbol of India's changing global identity. Today, when the world sees the Make in India label, it gets assurance that it also gets confidence in the quality of our indigenously developed platforms and systems. And this is the real strength of the Atmanirbhar Bharat. Self-reliance is no longer just a slogan. It is the unbreakable foundation of our national security. Friends, on the occasion of Independence Day, all of you must have seen and heard when the Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi announced the Sudarshan Chakra mission from the ramparts of the Red Fort. The Sudarshan Chakra mission is our resolve for India's self-defense, under which in the coming years all important places in the country will be covered with a shield of modern and indigenously developed technology. I am pleased that we are progressing rapidly in this direction. DRDO has recently successfully completed the first test of the integrated air defense weapon system. In addition, DRDO in the recent past has also successfully tested a high-powered directed energy weapon. I think these successes are not just of DRDO or the armed forces, but of the entire nation. Friends, during Operation Sindoor, we also saw better coordination among the three armed forces and their jointness. I believe that the jointness and integration of our forces played a major important role in the success of the Operation Sindoor. Therefore, I think we should also move forward in strengthening joint strategic communication. Friends, given how technologies are changing, accordingly, we need to accommodate the patterns of training of our forces. I was very happy to learn that the Army Training Command, RTRAC, has taken a policy decision to provide drone technology-related training to all Jawans of our Army by 2027. This will undoubtedly prove to be a game-changer step in this technological era. Friends, when I talk about changing technology and the changing world, it becomes very necessary that we also adapt our forces according to the changing world. For this, I have seen told that our army has taken the initiative for the formation of the Rudra Brigade, Shaktivan Regiment, Divyastra Battery, Drone Platoon, and the Bhairav Battalion. This is a matter of the great happiness because all these things have undoubtedly become very necessary keeping the future in mind. Friends, I would also like to say a few things about our Navy's technological progress. During Operation Sindoor, the way our Navy maintained strategic positions which limited the enemy's movement completely in the Arabian Sea. Our Navy's presence in the Indian Ocean is keeping our maritime borders completely secure. Our government is also working with full readiness to make the Navy even stronger and more robust. Just yesterday, I witnessed the commissioning of INS Himagiri and INS Udaygiri in our Navy. According to the changing world and the changing technology, such numerous platforms and infrastructure are not only being included in the Navy, but are also strengthening it. Similarly, the Indian Air Force is also continuously strengthening itself by inducting everything from long-range missiles to next-generation beyond visual range weapons. The counter-US grid is being further strengthened in view of the increasing use of drones, and besides, whether it's procurement of the policy-related changes, we are always moving forward in the direction of strengthening our forces. Friends, in today's era, wars have become so sudden and unpredictable that it is very difficult to predict when any war will end and how long it will last. So we must be prepared for every situation. We must be prepared for this so that our surge capacity is sufficient. That is, if any war stretches from 2 months, 4 months, a year, 2 years, even 5 years, then we should be fully prepared for it. That is why we need to streamline our defense industry. Friends, in today's era, any conflict affects the entire country and every citizen can come under its purview. A country's economic system, industrial structure, technological capabilities, education system, all these have now become major components of security. Therefore, the scope of defense preparedness cannot be limited to the armed forces alone. In such a situation, the importance of communication becomes even greater. Through dialogue, we not only share experiences and information, but also understand each other's capabilities, challenges, and needs. And this understanding leads us to those strategies which are necessary for success in multi-dimensional warfare. Friends, I want to emphasize that in today's time, the responsibility of being prepared is not only for the soldiers. The whole country and every citizen will have to be alert and capable at their own level. National security is no longer just a matter of armies, but has become an issue of a whole-of-nation approach. In this, the active role of industries, academia, media, technical institutes, and the civil society is necessary. Friends, the country's defense is not only handled by soldiers at the border, but also by the scientists who develop new technologies, the industrialists who produce weapon systems, and the teachers who prepare the next generation for warfare. Friends, when we look ahead, we should remember that the challenges before India are formidable, but our resolve and courage are even bigger. The world respects us not just for strength, but for our dedication to truth, peace, and justice. We do not want anyone's land, but we are ready to go to any extent to protect our land. We must take this country forward with our unity, our clear intentions, and the full commitment. With this confidence, we will confidently march toward 2047 and take India to new heights. Friends, in the end, I would like to say that today's Rana Samvad is not just an exchange of views, but an opportunity to understand the various dimensions of the security, policy making, and understanding different facets of the three services. The discussions here will give us an opportunity to think about how we can make India more empowered, secure, and self-reliant. I hope that your thoughts, your suggestions, and perspectives will be helpful in making the nation's defense policy more effective in the times to come. Let me conclude my address by wishing you all the very best for this meaningful dialogue. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.